evening. My name is Sid Bryan, and I am the chairman of the Sierra County Democratic Party. Welcome to the first, and at this point, the only scheduled forum featuring Democratic candidates for Congress in New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District. The Sierra County Democratic Party organized this conversation because we wanted to help voters make an informed choice in next June's CD2 Democratic primary. We are gratified that each and every one of you made the effort to take advantage of this rare opportunity to make a side-by-side comparison of the two Democratic challengers, qualifications, values, and vision. For those voters throughout the District 2 who could not make the trip, professional videographer Julia Rakow will be filming the forum tonight, and her video of the proceedings will be mounted on YouTube for all interested parties to view. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of the dedicated members of our outreach committee who organized this public education event. Will all of you volunteering here tonight please stand and accept a round of applause. Additional thanks are due to David Baake and Madeline Hildebrandt, first for acting on their conviction that District 2 deserves a congressperson who will fight hard to promote the well-being of all of its citizens, not just powerful special interests. We also appreciate their willingness to take the time out of their busy campaigns to appear here on the same stage, present their platforms, and answer questions from the audience. Now may I present the county's other officers. First is VP Barbara Perlman, Secretary Leslie Sekovec, Treasurer Felipe Hernandez, and now chairperson of our Democratic Outreach Committee, Diana Tittle, has the pleasure of introducing our forum moderator.
Good evening, TRC and District 2. Thanks for turning out. This is really impressive. Our moderator, Fred Martino, is Director of Content at KRWG Public Media in Las Cruces. He also anchors the region's only television news magazine, Newsmakers, which airs Thursday at 7, Saturday at 5 p.m., and Sunday at 11 a.m. on KRWG TV. Fred was recruited by KRWG in 2008 when he joined New Mexico State University as an assistant executive director of university broadcasting and director of content for KRWG Public Media. He came to New Mexico after 9 years as the director of news and public affairs for the public radio and TV station in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Before that, he was a television reporter and anchor, also back east. Fred's work in Las Cruces began with a new commitment to digital media. The move quickly paid dividends as www.krwg.org was named the best online news site in the state by the New Mexico Associated Press in 2008. Enjoying a 400% increase in traffic since its inception, the website has gone on to win 2 more awards from the New Mexico Broadcasters Association. Under Fred's leadership, all of KRWG TV's content is now posted online, and KRWG FM doubled its daily newscast and its weekly public affairs programming, also doubled from 30 minutes to 1 hour. Both the radio and the TV station now broadcast another of Fred's innovations, Fronteras, A Changing America, half-hour programs that focus on our vibrant border communities and the diversity of our local people. Indeed, Fred's commitment to bringing diversity to the region's airwaves by diversifying the station's staffing, the people we see and hear on air and online, and the viewpoints presented is a common thread of his many accomplishments, some of which he pulled off in an era of reduced budgets. Upon deciding that we wanted a journalist of impeachable integrity to moderate this forum and ensure its neutrality, we immediately thought of Fred Martino. Thank you, Fred, for answering the call. The floor is now yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Diana. It's delightful to be here, and I am honored by that introduction and honored to be here for this program. One of the things that I believe so strongly in, and I know many of you do, and our viewers and our listeners tell us this, is that we have a responsibility to inform the public about politics and public policy. And this is one of the most important things that we do in the community, as we're doing tonight, but also on television and on radio. That is the opportunity to have political forums. In fact, David and Mad have agreed to come to KRWG-TV in December for a televised forum that will be airing later in the month in December. So I'm very happy about that, because at no other time in my career have we had more challenges in our political lives, in our country. And it is a very, very challenging time for all of us. And we need to have the opportunity to learn about the people who want to be able to come forth and bring a responsible effort to change things in terms of politics and political discourse. And this is part of that tonight. So before we get started with our candidates, they are going to be giving some opening statements to you. But first, they had the opportunity to have me read a short bio to precede that introduction. And we have ladies first. This is what Congressional candidate Madeline Hildebrandt, a resident of Socorro, New Mexico, thought you should know about her background. Madeline is a college history teacher. She received her master's degree at San Francisco State University and her PhD at the University of Maine. Dr. Hildebrandt focused her years of study on Middle Eastern terrorism, labor history, and masculinity as power. She enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard and served the military police and as a radioman. She volunteered for the John Kerry presidential campaign and was elected as a delegate. Upon her spouse's military retirement, they chose to return to New Mexico and purchased a home in Socorro, where they've lived since 2013. She likes to say she didn't choose New Mexico chose her. And now she believes it is time for her to give back to the state that she loves. She is running under her nickname, Mad. Congressional candidate David Baake of Las Cruces submitted this bio. David grew up on the Texas-New Mexico border, about a mile from the Sutherland Park racetrack. His mother was a teacher, his father a student at New Mexico State University. David's parents took him hiking in the Oregon Mountains before he was old enough to walk. His family went backpacking in the Gila Wilderness every summer, and his grandfather, a Presbyterian minister, baptized him in the Gila River. From these experiences, David developed a passion for conservation. At Harvard Law School, he focused on environmental law and completed internships with the Sierra Club and the U.S. Department of Justice. After graduating, David worked with the Natural Resources Defense Council, an environmental nonprofit. In this position, David litigated before the D.C. Circuit, the second most powerful court in the nation. He met with members of the Obama White House to discuss the policies underlying the United States entry into the Paris Climate Agreement. And he testified before the EPA on how to reduce air pollution from airplanes. Most recently, David served as a law clerk for 2 federal judges. He helped decide hundreds of federal cases, including a fraud lawsuit against a major pharmaceutical company that settled for $282 million. So, there are our candidates for the 2nd District, our Democratic candidates. In the next segment of the forum, they're going to speak for themselves. Madeline and David will have up to 5 minutes each to make an opening statement before we get to your questions and my questions. And a coin toss backstage determine the order in which they'll address you. And David now will go first. David.
Thank you so much, Fred. I want to start off by thanking Donna Tittle, Sid Bryan, and the Sierra County Democratic Party for organizing this wonderful event. Fred for moderating. Dr. Matt Hildebrandt. Am I supposed to call you doctor? I'm going to start calling you doctor. Dr. Hildebrandt for joining me in this conversation. Since I started my campaign, I've had the opportunity to spend time in every county in our district. I've met construction workers, pecan farmers, and small business owners, teachers, students, and retirees, musicians and artists, and people who clean homes for a living. I've met people whose families have been in New Mexico since the 1500s, and immigrants who are proud to call our state home. I've had the pleasure of meeting the governors of 4 Pueblo tribes, and had the honor of attending a feast at Acapulco Pueblo. I am deeply humbled to ask these great people for the privilege of representing them in Congress. As I toured the state, I heard New Mexicans speak again and again about the need for new leadership. Leaders who will work to stop the assault on the middle class. Leaders who will celebrate New Mexico's diversity and stand up to Donald Trump's bigotry. Leaders who understand that economic development and environmental protection must go hand in hand. I believe I'm the type of leader that New Mexico needs and deserves. I grew up in a middle-class family, the son of a public school teacher and a journalist. I worked hard to obtain a world-class education so that I could become an effective advocate for my values, the values that we all share: conservation, civil rights, and economic fairness. As a result, I've had the opportunity to shape policy at the highest levels of government. I helped prosecute polluters at the Department of Justice. I met with members of the Obama White House to help craft the policies that allowed us to be leaders in the world at the Paris climate negotiations. And I testified before EPA on reducing aircraft pollution and drafted a letter that was signed by 22 members of Congress on this subject. As a law clerk in the federal judiciary, I helped decide major civil rights cases. I wrote opinions that allowed disabled Americans to cut through the red tape and the bureaucracy to get the benefits that they had earned. I was a tireless defender of our constitutional rights. I know how our government works. I've worked in all 3 branches. And I know that too often our government doesn't work because politicians have rigged the system to benefit the rich and powerful. Last month, I published an article in the Albuquerque Journal where I explained why Mark Zuckerberg, the billionaire founder of Facebook, may never have to pay federal income tax again. The tax code is full of loopholes that allow the ultra-rich to avoid paying their fair share. And that hurts us all, because we have disabled veterans here in New Mexico who have never seen a disability check. We have schools that are underfunded and roads that are crumbling. We have people who are being forced to choose between paying for their prescription and paying for rent. And we have students who are being forced to take on staggering amounts of debt in order to receive the education they need to succeed in our society. Washington's priorities are totally out of whack. We need new leaders who know how to fix this. Rather than cutting taxes from multinational corporations, as the House of Representatives did today, we should be investing in our middle class and working families. We should be providing relief to small business owners and entrepreneurs who actually create jobs in our community. And we should be investing in scientific research that will unlock solutions to the most pressing problems we face, from cancer to climate change. We should be strengthening Social Security, helping Americans obtain health care, and addressing the opioid epidemic. What we should not be doing is blaming immigrants or tearing families apart. What we should not be doing is selling off our public lands or sacrificing our children's future by polluting our air and our water. We don't need to do that. We are the richest nation on earth. We can afford to invest in our people while remaining true to our values. That's why I'm running for Congress, because I know what it takes to fix a rigged system so middle-class families can get ahead again. Thank you very much.
And now we're going to hear from Mad Hildebrandt.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mad Hildebrandt, and I am one of those women who did not expect to get into political life. That's not something I had ever planned. I was going to teach college probably till the day I died, because I enjoy that, and I enjoy the people that we meet as kids that are learning how to have a life and how to move forward in their lives. And there's so many things that we're beginning to lose, and that this new administration is taking away. And these are the reasons that I decided to run for Congress. I went to the Women's March, and that was like a watershed moment for me, because there were so many people there, and the feeling that all of these people who were hurt had, that there was excitement, there was people that were empowered. It was a feeling that I didn't expect. I just didn't expect that. And so when I left that Women's March, and it was the Women's March, by the way, in Albuquerque. I was going to go to Washington, D.C. And at the moment that I had my finger hovering over the keyboard, I was going to pay to go. I realized, no, I needed to stay here and see what New Mexico was doing, how New Mexico felt. And so I went to Albuquerque. And what came to me was that women needed to step up. Women needed to step up. And I began seeing that this is happening across this country, and it was an amazing thing. Yesterday, I went to Rama and to the Navajo reservation up there, and I went with a woman, Rebecca Tutchin, who is a Laguna Pueblo woman, who this year decided that she needed also to step up. And now she is the secretary of the Democratic Party of Cibola County. She's the first Native American woman to hold a position like that up there. And she took me to Rama, where I met so many people that were hurting, and people who need help. And it wasn't any different than the people in Grants who also are hurting, or the people in TRC who are hurting. The people in Las Cruces, in Albuquerque, in Hobbs, across our district, across our state, people are hurting. And this should not be happening. So one of the things that happened to us is that our economy is supposedly out of the recession, right? We're all told this, that our economy is better. But none of us feel that the economy is better. And I can tell you what happened. In the 1980s, each worker got the workers got 70% of the GDP. The workers. And that means that the companies did not get everything. Between then and now, that has gone away. And do you know how much we get now? Us, the workers? 0% of that GDP when they're talking about about our gross domestic product, what we are now making as a country. That does not come to us. So workers and people, all of us, are hurting. We are not out of the recession. We are still in the recession. And we need someone who will represent us. Someone who knows that and will go to Congress and say, no, enough, stop. Let's look at how we are recognizing an America that is out of recession, an American people that are successful. And let's look at that from a different point of view, and not by looking at how well our corporations are doing, but how well the people are doing. What are our wages? How well are our unions doing? How good is our education? That's how we should be telling whether our American country and our people are doing well or not. So we need to change things, and we need to see that happen now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mad and David. And now I'm going to have two questions, the same question for both of you. And you'll have 2 minutes to respond. We have a timekeeper who will give you a notice when you're near your allotted time. I'm going to start with the first question with Madeline, and it's a very purposefully a very general one, a very open one. Why are you the person to represent the Democratic Party in this district? Why do you have the best chance to win this election?
Okay, I gave that a lot of thought when I decided that I was going to run, and so I started looking at the district. And I saw that our district is quite varied, and it is split in the middle by our Rio Grande River. And along that Rio Grande River are our cities and our larger communities, by and large. And those communities tend to be Democratic, and in party-wise, and they tend to be progressive. And so those communities are going to vote for the Democratic candidate pretty well. You know, and of course we're in TRC, and this is not. This is a more conservative district or county. Now, on both sides, we have very conservative rural land. I am a rural person myself. I was raised on a farm. I broke my own horse. Our family lost our property when from eminent domain. So ranchers and farmers are my people. I can easily, talk to people about and understand the needs of rural people. And the same when you look on the other side, when you're looking at the northern side of the east, is also farmers. And again, that's where I come from. So I see that I can reach into those communities, and I understand what they need. I understand what they need. And as far as the south, we're looking at, or the southeast, we're looking at Hobbs and the oil wells. And the oil workers are union people, by and large. And that's one of my areas of expertise, education-wise.
All right, Mad, thank you very much. David, same question for you. Why are you the person, do you believe, to represent the Democrats in the general election?
Thanks, Fred. Well, I think that, as I touched on a little bit in my opening remarks, I think that there's really two important things that I bring to this. First is I think that my values are New Mexico's values. As I said, in my biography, I was baptized in the Gila River. I've been hiking all over the state since I was a little kid, and so I really love the state. I love its people, and I am committed to getting to know them. And so I've had a chance to visit every county in our district, and this is a huge district from Hobbs to Lordsburg, from Los Lunas to Sunland Park, Grants, New Mexico, our 4 Pueblo tribes. I've been making an effort to reach out to everybody, and so my passion for the state, my work ethic that I'm going to get out there and meet with everybody, and my willingness to listen. So, I think that combining, you know, a good set of democratic values, an understanding of how the government works, and a willingness to listen to folks and find solutions, because I certainly don't know the answer to all of these problems. I don't even know what all the problems are. No politician can claim they know that. You have to be out there and making yourself available to people, and that's what I have been trying to do in this campaign, and I pledge to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. David, we start with you on this question, and then we'll move to Mad. And this is a difficult one. You both spoke with great passion about a variety of different issues, but I'm going to ask you to do something here that may not feel comfortable. But politics is about choices, and we have to make priority decisions. If you are elected, if one of you defeats the Republican running in the 2nd District and you are elected to Congress, what will be your first legislative priority, David?
Well, I think that you know, probably the first thing that I would like to do is get a bill on to prevent diversion of the Gila River. That's a passion of mine. It's a passion of the people of that area. Beyond that, I think we desperately need to reauthorize the DREAM Act. We're seeing people in our communities that are being torn out of, you know, their schools, their communities, their churches, and I think it's wrong. I think we need to put an end to that. People who are law-abiding and are contributing to our communities should not be ripped up. We should be enforcing our law, taking our law enforcement priorities toward people who are actually present a threat. So those are two things that I would want to do right off the bat. I would, you know, hopefully this awful tax reform bill doesn't pass. But I think that is an area where we really need to change some things, because, as I've indicated, I mean, the middle class is really getting a raw deal in terms of, you know, our services are getting cut, our wages are stagnating, our prices are rising, and at the same time they're cutting investment into the programs that benefit us, like Social Security, like education, like healthcare. And we have the money to do it, but it's all it's going to the people at the very top, and they're not paying their fair share. So that would be sort of 3 areas where I would really want to take action.
Okay, we now move to Mad, and Mad, I want to find out from you, what would be your first legislative priority should you be elected?
This is one that there is absolutely no question on. This is, again, one of the reasons why I'm running in the first place. And the very first thing I will do deals with the Dreamers. And I have a plan that I've been developing and working on. And the first thing I want to do is create a path to citizenship for our Dreamers, because our Dreamers, these kids, come to America, and how many of them do not know that they are even not citizens, that they have illegal status? So many of them don't even know that until they go and they get a driver's license or try to go to college or something. So my plan is that these kids who go to high school and go to college, they're taking history classes, they're taking political science classes, they're taking all the right classes. They take the tests while they're in school, so that the day they walk across that stage, in one hand, they will get their diploma. In the other hand, they're going to get their citizenship. That's the first thing I'm going to work on.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to recognize now Sierra County Democratic Party Outreach Chair Diana Tittle. She's going to ask the first questions from our podium, and I know that she has a question for each of the candidates, and they will, again, for these questions, they'll have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to respond. Diana?
David, I'd like to know what you would say to women to let them know that you will have their interests first and foremost.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the question. Women's rights are really important to me. I have some wonderful women in my life. My sister and I are very close, my mother and I, and I've been a contributor to Planned Parenthood. And so one of the things that I see as a major concern right now is the Trump administration's effort to undo the birth control coverage rule. This is a rule that saved taxpayers and women millions of dollars. It brought unintended pregnancy down to the lowest record that we've seen in recent memory. And so it was an excellent rule, but Trump bowed to some extremists on the far right and has gutted it. So I think maintaining birth control access is critical. Another issue that I think doesn't get as much attention as it should is sexual assaults. And Martin Heinrich introduced today a bill that would, I think, go a long way to helping end sexual assault in our military by transferring the regulatory authority from the military chain of command to an independent military prosecutor. It was a bipartisan bill. I think that's an excellent idea. We need to be looking at that issue on our campuses too. I mean, to me, this is a civil rights issue that women students too often are held back because they don't want to, end up dropping out of college or something like that because they're afraid of seeing their assailant in class, and that we're not doing enough by these students, and it's hurting all of us that they're not able to get ahead. So those are a few of my priorities, but it's a very important issue to me. Thank you.
And Madeline, what are you doing to persuade millennials to come out and vote for you?
Thank you for that question.
I'll campaign with her if she beats me.
That is always a hard one. Millennials have not shown themselves to be super political, except as they're becoming more and more progressive, and they got onto the Bernie train. And I myself am a Bernie-crat. I have to fess up to that. I have a few conservative areas. But I think that when we go out and we talk with young people, it's important to keep in mind the things that they need and the things that they're saying that they need and the things that they're wanting to see for the future. And they want health care for all. And they're saying that they want a free education, which would be a really great thing to be able to get. Here in New Mexico, 48% of the kids actually all of New Mexicans carry at least $20,000 in student loans. And so removing that burden for education from the students would be an amazing thing. And that is something that I would gladly, as a college instructor, get behind, because education is so important for our future and for the future of our young millennials.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And now we'll ask you to come to the podium. For this portion of our evening, the ground rules are slightly different, and if someone has a question, please come forward now. You will address your question to a candidate. They will have 90 seconds to respond. And then the other candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. Of course, this is up to 90 seconds, up to 60 seconds. You don't have to use the entire time. However, the timekeeper will indicate when there is 15 seconds remaining. So we want to get to everyone's questions tonight. And this is going to be a difficult part, but it's going to feel rude. But in order to get to everyone's questions, after you ask your question, and you can come up now, by the way, after you ask your question and that answer begins, I'm going to ask you to sit down. That's going to feel very rude, but please sit down. And that will allow the next person to come up so that we won't have any breaks between questions. I'm also going to ask you to say your name and where you're from before you ask your question. Sorry, there's a lot of rules there, but we had to get to the rules.
My name is Alice Hutchins, and I'm from here in Tiercy. And my question was, how have your religious or spiritual practices influenced your political views?
And you want to start with?
Oh, David.
Okay,
Since
David.
you were baptized in the Gila.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think that certainly I have a deep reverence for nature, as many New Mexicans do, and but more than it being a spiritual thing for me, it's a family thing. That I have memories of being out in nature with my grandfather who's deceased, and my parents and my sister and my uncles, and just so many New Mexicans, I think, have really great experiences of being out on the public lands with their families. And so I see there being a tie between spirituality and family. Beyond that, I would say that I think it's appropriate to keep a distance between your spiritual or religious inclinations and what you do for policy, because ultimately you have to represent everyone in the district, and if you have to look at what's best for them. But certainly having a moral guidance that comes from spirituality in terms of believing in fairness, believing in looking after disadvantaged individuals, believing in leaving a better country for our kids and grandkids. I think all of that has a spiritual element. So thank you for the question.
Okay, and now we're going to hear from Mad Hildebrandt on that, and as we do, if someone else has a question, you may come forward while she answers.
Thank you for that question, Alice. I am a Roman Catholic. I actually live right behind San Miguel's in Socorro. To me, I see my religion and how it affects my decision-making as it relates to family and ethics, and just the morality that it gives, that it provides me as a base. And for me, that is do no harm. Do no harm. You have to make a decision. You may have to make hard choices, but that choice should do as little harm as it possibly can and do the most good.
Okay, thank you. Our next question.
My name's Patty Carney. I'm from here in TRC. I picture that once you get into Congress, you're going to have to deal with people who are totally opposed to you and have to work with them. So I'd like to know about your experience having civil and constructive and effective communication with people who disagree with you.
And you want to address that too?
I'll start with Mad, because I know
Okay.
college faculty have to do that. I've been there.
Mad.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, college instructors do have to do that. And so what's really important is to be able to talk to the person that you're dealing with on their own terms and try to find common ground. And that's one of the things that I do when I'm mediating or when I'm working with a student who just is not understanding what maybe they're needing to do or understanding what we've been talking about. And so by finding out and becoming just engaging in a conversation with them, so that doesn't have to do with the topic at hand, and finding common ground in that way, then you can eventually come to a point where you can at least talk to each other. And I think that's the important way to do that.
Thank you for the question, Patty. I think that it is important to be civil at all times, and unfortunately, that's not something that we're seeing from this administration. We need to return civility to politics, and I do have experience. The first judge that I clerked for was a staunch Republican, Mormon, and we had some wildly different views on a lot of things, but we found a way on every single case to get to the right answer. And I found that his values were not that different from mine. We both wanted to faithfully adhere to the law and the Constitution. We both wanted things that were the outcome to be fair. We had cases where people were applying for Social Security benefits and they had been denied. And I was impressed by the amount of compassion that he showed. And so I do think that this experience has made me feel that a lot of Republicans, a lot of people on the other side, their values may often be more similar than you think, and you just have to explain the position in a way that they can get on board with it.
Matt?
I think this was Patty's began with me.
Okay.
Is there a rebuttal?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to our next question.
My name is Bill Lindenau. I'm from Kingston in Sierra County. And I was wondering what the two candidates thought about the 20,000 sorties that Holloman Air Force Base is proposing to fly at 500 to 2,000 feet over the Aldo Leopold Wilderness area. And what would they do about it?
Okay, you want to address that too?
David first.
David, okay.
Well, thanks, Bill. I've heard a lot about this. I obviously love the Aldo Leopold Wilderness. I went on a little backpacking trip there the beginning of October, and I have to be honest that I'm going to need to do a little bit more research on this question. I think our wilderness values are incredibly important, and am generally going to be wanting to preserve them when at all possible. However, I haven't seen what the Air Force's justification for this is. If it seems to be an incredibly important national security interest, then I would certainly weigh that as well, because we do need to have to make sure that our military is properly trained. But I'd love for you to send me. I mean, this is the type of issue that when you get out and listen to folks, you really want to learn about. So I would love to do some reading on this for folks to weigh in. But again, I value the wilderness very much, and that's going to be something I would look at closely. Thanks.
That is a very interesting question. Again, it's not one that I've looked into at this point, but will do so. My husband spent 30 years in the military. And during that time, we did live on a number of bases and of various types. And one was in an Army base in New Jersey, which was connected to Air Force. And so they were continuously training. So my assumption here is this is a training exercise. And I would like to see exactly what the plan is, where they're going, if it's high enough that it's not affecting the wildlife. There would be too many different things, different parameters we would need to look at to see what are they doing. Thank you.
Okay, as we wait for another audience member to come forward, is someone coming forward? I see someone coming forward. I won't ask a question then, since we do have another question. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Barr. I'm from Lake Valley, south of Hillsborough. I have a question with regard to public education, which serves our least privileged part of our population. What would you do as a congressman to combat the present onslaught, the attack on public education?
And you want to begin with?
I'll start with David.
David.
Thank you so much for that question. And I think that public education is incredibly important. My mother was a public school teacher for 35 years, and a strong believer. I attended public schools my whole life. I'm a strong believer in investing in our public schools and making sure that it is an opportunity to lift people out of poverty, that we have good schools in every zip code, not just the wealthier ones. And I'm very concerned with some of the things that Betsy DeVos is doing in terms of trying to move toward more privatization, more charter schools, that type of thing. I don't think education should be a business. It should be a public service that everyone has a right to. And if people feel that the schools are not good enough, that they want to have their kids go to a charter school, my response would be get on the PTA, invest, talk to your city council, your mayor, get those schools to be better. Don't go looking for a way out, because not everyone has that way out. And so I think, the patriotic thing for us to do is invest in our schools and keep them public. And I don't think this privatization movement is good for our country at all.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you for this question. This is a question that's very near and dear to me, being an educator. Not too long ago, sometime last year, Arizona's Representative Paul Mosley had said that in Arizona he thought they should repeal the law on compulsory education, and that education is a privilege for the children who want to go there. The rest of our children are just keeping them down. So this is something that is not acceptable. I'm a product of public schools, and I do not believe in the voucher system. The voucher system takes money out of our public schools and puts them into private schools, often religious schools. And this is not a plan that is sustainable. These are people that are already sending their children to private schools and will just erode our public schools, especially in our rural communities, which the plan I've read is sending those children to school via the internet.
Okay, our next question from the audience.
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Cartland. I've lived in TRC for about 10 years, and I love it here. The specifics of the issues, I'm not hearing a whole lot of differences, and I really appreciate what you're both saying. I guess my question is more along, it seems to me that there's a power structure which is white men, and mostly older white men, and I wonder how either of you would deal with that.
And you want to begin with?
David.
Okay, David.
You sure you don't want to begin this one, Matt? Do you want to? Or
Go right ahead.
I'll take it. So, I think that's a very interesting question, and I'm well aware that as a white man, I've had many privileges that others in our society have not enjoyed, and it's unacceptable. I think from everything from police brutality that we've seen in a lot of cities to differing investment in education. These are things that we really need to address. We need to address a history of racial oppression in this country, and so I take that question to heart. And there's also the gender dynamic as well, and not even just men and women, but also the LGBT community under assault right now with Trump trying to ban transgender service members who are heroes serving our country, trying to ban them from re-enlisting. That is the absolute most despicable thing that you can do. So I take this question to heart, and people who have been oppressed by systemic racism, systemic sexism, curing that problem is something I take very seriously. So I appreciate the question.
Matt?
Thank you for this question. I am very proud of the fact that my great Aunt Mary was a suffragette, and like women around this country and around this world, women are for women first, and then our families, and we don't necessarily appreciate men telling us what we need to do. So women, I'm excited to say, are rising up and are running for election. And this is the best thing we can do, is see women running for election and being elected. So all the men out there that are saying, what do we need to do to change this white male power structure, is vote for women.
Hello, I'm Ali Scotton from Las Cruces. Both of the candidates have spoken about their love for the land. Matt, you've spoken about your past in agriculture and ranching, and David, your background in environmental law. And my question is, in light of the Trump administration's current onslaught against our environment, if one of you were elected Congress, what would be your first policy that you would try to implement to protect our environment?
And you'll begin with?
Begin with Matt.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you. You have a chance to think about it for once.
So the environment is so important to all of us, because this is something that we need to leave this for our children, right? So what is happening with the Trump administration is that these men and some women are operating off of the idea of greed. How much can they use, and how much can they get out of the land and out of the people? So what we need to do as inheritors to Teddy Roosevelt, who was our first conservationist, we need to strengthen the law that says, these laws, preservation. There's nothing that says that they can even shrink or get rid of these lands, these monuments. A monument can't be gotten rid of. There's no mechanism to that. So we have to make sure that that cannot and will not ever happen again. So we have to, make another law that says once it is a monument or a public land, no future president can just sign something and say, I think I'll shrink Bear's ears.
Okay, David?
Thanks, Ali, for the question. It's almost like you know me. You're coming up and asking a question that's perfectly in my line of interest. I could talk till I was blue in the face about environmental priorities. I agree with Mad that we need to make sure that we protect Bear's Ears and the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and also the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks. That's not, Secretary Zinke has said he doesn't plan to shrink it, but he wants unspecified management changes. Well, what are those changes going to be? Are they going to be opening up the whole monument to four-wheelers? That would, for all intents and purposes, render it not a national monument anymore. So we need to protect our monuments. Another point that I would make that our senators have done a lot of good leadership on is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Part of this awful, awful tax bill that they're trying to pass in the Senate, first of all, it would get rid of the individual mandate, which would undermine the Affordable Care Act. It would put us $1.5 trillion into debt to give a tax break to corporations and millionaires. And it would also open up the Arctic Wildlife Refuge for drilling. So three of the worst possible policies you could possibly think of all roll into one. That's something we need to fight.
My name is Catherine Stewart Roach, and I'm from Socorro. And I come from a long line of people who value education. The trouble is that it usually is in the form of degrees, and I have a lot of degrees. But as someone living in Socorro, I realize that we need plumbers and carpenters and mechanics. And I'm wondering, my question would first go to Mad, what would you propose to get the education benefits and to emphasize and increase these kinds of education and training, which we need very much?
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you. That's a really important question, and this is one that I've given a lot of thought to as well. And I believe very, very much in vocational education. And what I would like to see is a return. We had a lot. I mean, this was a wonderful thing in America that we had vocational education. I used to teach at Albuquerque TVI when it was called that. And that's a vocational institution. And what I would like to see done, and with a combination between state and federal monies, because that's the best way to get things done, is to have vocational education in the high schools again, in virtually any high school, and also in colleges, so that and heavily on internship, so that even if a student wants, say, to be a baker, and there is no bakery instructor, then that person can go out of the school and find someone who would then be training them through an internship in the school in conjunction with this internship or the vocational education at the school. They would also have classes in entrepreneurship, so that this student then, when he or she gets out, would not have to work at Walmart in the bakery. This person would have the training and the support to start a business.
Okay. Thank you very much, Matt. And we're going to have David's answer, and we'll ask the next audience member to come forward.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm loving these questions. They're just, inspiring me to talk about things that I really like to talk about. So one thing an idea that I have, a concrete proposal, I want us to see us bring back the Civilian Conservation Corps, which we had in the 1930s. You're in Socorro. You know the Baake del Apache National Wildlife Refuge was built by the CCC. I think we should bring it back. Is this a crazy pie-in-the-sky idea? Well, let me tell you something. For a third of the cost of this tax bill they're trying to shove down our throats, we could put 1 million people to work on projects that would protect our environment, projects that would invest in clean energy. A third. They are robbing us blind to give to their massive corporate buddies. And it's, so I want to see us invest in giving training to our people so we can start doing things that benefit our community. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Frank Hogg. I live in Kingston. My question is, do you support the notion of single-payer health care, also known as Medicare for all? And I guess I would direct it to David.
Thank you, Frank. So I think it's a really interesting question, and I like the idea. In theory, I think that there could be a lot of efficiencies. I like the equity aspect of it. I think that that allowing, one thing that would be good is it would allow the government to negotiate drug prices. Right now, Medicare is prohibited from doing that, and by having all of the market power, they could actually do a really good job in bringing down prices. I do, have some hesitation about going too quickly toward this system, because the fact is, right now, we have 190 million people who are on private insurance. You can't switch them all over overnight. So it would have to be pursuant to a well-thought-out plan that would gradually increase the number of people who are on Medicare or Medicaid or whatever government program that we wanted to get them on. I'm absolutely in favor of universal health care. I think health care is a right. Every American should be there. But in terms of whether it's Medicare for all, Medicaid for all, a variety of different options, I think that that's something that we need to have a serious look at. So that would be my answer. Thank you very much.
Matt?
Yes, thank you. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I am a very strong supporter of Medicare for all. I would like to see this done similar in the way that TRICARE or the VA system works. In both of those, TRICARE is what military people are on. This is what I have, and this is what I would like to see everybody have, the equivalent of what I have. And all of the medicines are negotiated drug prices. So this is a good thing. This is a way that we can save cost-cutting savings. I would also like to see that you wouldn't completely do away with private insurance, and this is where you would have an additional thing for people who want luxury services like facelifts or something that is not necessary. And this is similar to what's going on in Austria. And I do have a friend in Austria who paid absolutely nothing to have a double mastectomy. I would like to see that here.
Okay. Another question.
My name is Barbara Perlman. I live in Hillsborough. The last election was a shocker, I think, to many of us. And I think part of the problem is we kind of defeated ourselves. We were progressive, or we were establishment, or we were all these different names. And by not coming together, I think we got Donald Trump. What would you do to make sure that we are not divided this time? This is a unique opportunity to take back CD2. We cannot lose this opportunity. How will you bring us all together? David.
Thank you so much for that question. I absolutely agree. We need to have unity. And I've told Matt, I've told other people who were in the race who no longer are, the day that you become the nominee, if it's not me, I will be your #1 supporter. I will be out there knocking on doors. I will, whatever you need me to do, reaching the millennials. So that's, I'm going to walk the walk. That's all I can say. And I do think it's a shame, and that's why one of the reasons why people ask me, did I support Bernie, did I support Hillary? I say that is not a question I want to answer because I think it's counterproductive. We need to put all that in the past. We need to move forward with policies we can all agree on. Investing in our middle class, protecting our environment, protecting our dreamers. These are not, progressive, moderate. I mean, there's no need to label it. These are American values that we're fighting for. And so I think that we desperately need to unify. We desperately need to find the areas where we can really, all get behind whoever the candidate is and take the seat, because we need someone in Washington who will provide a check on the Trump administration. Right now, what we're seeing is just, it's dangerous, and it's threatening all of our values. It's threatening to turn our nation into something that we are not. We are not that type of nation that deports people who have lived here their whole lives. We're not the type of nation that discriminates against transgender service members. So thank you very much for the question.
Okay, Matt?
Thank you, Barbara. This is a situation that has happened in our party where we have split, or we perceive a split. But when you actually sit down and start talking to some people who label themselves as not progressive or as progressive, you find out that these people in different rooms are thinking the same thing, and they want the same things to happen. And so they really aren't that dramatically different. It's more an issue that people are having a hard time talking to each other. So that's one of the things that we need to do as a party, and our party leadership needs to do, is help people to understand that they're not that far apart, and that when you look at our House of Representatives, a good half of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. label themselves progressives. There's a progressive caucus, and it's been there forever. We're talking the civil rights and union labor.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We have time for one more audience question, and then I'm going to have a question to wrap up this evening.
Hi, I'm Stephen Rhodes, and I'm the former co-chair of Bernie Sanders for president during the primary here in Erie County. Bernie won here, beat Hillary. One of the reasons for that is a lot of us independents came out. And so my question is, and I've worked in government, state and federal government, on change. I have a doctorate degree and a lot of experience in that field. Here's the deal. What do you offer going to Congress that's different? Who are you going to align with? How are you going to make change happen? Because politics, as usual, is not working.
And who do you want to start with, sir? David, all right.
All right, thank you. I absolutely agree. Politics, as usual, is not working. And I think we need to radically rethink some of the things that are happening in our country and some of the things that we've touched on tonight. We need to radically rethink the way we're doing immigration. That we need, this system is completely broken. The system is being used to separate families. We're not getting, one of the reasons why our nation has been an economic leader is because we've been a nation of immigrants. We've welcomed people all over the world. They've come, and they've come to create jobs. So that's an area where we need to change everything. Tax is something that I get a little nerdy about, tax law, but this is how they screw us. I mean, $1.5 trillion to the debt to give to corporations. Then they're going to come back in 5 years and say, oh, there's no money for Social Security. There's no money for education. We're going to have to cut all these programs. This is how they do it. So, I want to see things that are very different from the priorities we have in there now. And things like expanding Social Security, making sure that every American has health care, and like I said, the idea of putting people to work to, if you cannot find a job, if you're long-term unemployed, you should be able to turn to the government and say, I want to do something useful and be put in the position where you can do that, whether it's promoting energy efficiency, whether it's installing solar panels, taking care of ecosystems. So these are, I do think we need some pretty dramatic changes, and I appreciate the question.
Okay, Matt?
Thank you for the question. What we need as we go forward is more activity, more action at the grassroots level. We need people to step forward and take positions on the school board. We need people who are going to take positions in their city council. This is something that can happen by independents and people on the ground, that people that have stepped out of the Democratic Party because they felt it wasn't right for them any longer. So this is why I'm running. This is actually why I'm running. Because I believe it needs to be somebody taking this position, this seat in Congress, who is completely outside and that has not run for anything before, that has spent a lifetime doing other things that she or he felt was important enough to live their life and do. And bring those experiences that are outside of politics into politics because somebody has to do it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mad. We're going to have closing statements in a moment, but I have one final question, and I actually changed my question because this did not come from the audience, so I think it's incredibly important. And so I would be remiss to allow this to pass without asking it. Predictions are that in less than 20 years, if changes are not made, we are going to see one of our most important parts of our social safety net in big trouble, Social Security. And it's, according to the experts, completely unnecessary. If the earnings cap on Social Security is removed, the problem disappears. But it's not part of our public policy debate. Do you support removing this cap so that all income is taxed? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, how will you fight for that? If the answer is no, what would you do instead? And Matt, I want to begin with you.
I do support that the earnings cap should be removed. I believe that that every one of us should be paying into this system because we are all relying on it. And Social Security was provided as a way to keep people from dying. Thank you out there. Yes, from having a woman having to eat, cat food. We think about those horror stories that we have heard of. And so Social Security is set to make sure that people have a safety net. And so by doing this, by removing this arbitrary cap that some people put so that they could protect their own incomes, this would make Social Security more viable. And in addition to that, I believe that we need to pay back into Social Security the money that was borrowed out of it to pay for other programs. So we have essentially raided Social Security, and that money is loaned out. Well, it's time to call in that debt.
Okay. David.
Fred, you're reading my mind over there. I have an op-ed actually that I think Matt has over on the table that I call for lifting the earnings cap. And for those who aren't, Social Security's policy wonks, this is what happens. Every American, whether you're Bill Gates or you're one of us, pays Social Security tax on the first $120,000 of wages. So that, and after that, there's no tax. It's tax-free. So Bill Gates is done paying into Social Security on January 1st every year. The other thing, this is even more criminal. They don't pay Social Security on investment income. this is something that is very different about how the ultra-rich and the middle class operate. They don't work for a living. They invest. And when they sell their stock to make money, not taxed. So we need to tax raise the income threshold. And I actually think we can expand Social Security, not just make it solvent, but actually increase benefits and lower the threshold. So thanks for that question.
Okay, well, thank you for answering it. We're going to conclude the forum with 2-minute closing statements from each candidate, and a coin flip backstage to determine the order. David is going to speak first, followed by Mad. And David, I think you probably want to go to the podium, right? Yeah, okay.
So it wasn't even a coin flip. Matt and I agreed by consensus. That's the kind of race we're running, and I'm going to continue to run. So once again, I want to thank Donna Tittle, Sid Bryan, the Sierra County Democratic Party. Fred, you've been a wonderful moderator. Mad, you've been wonderful as always to have a conversation with you. And I want to thank everyone who came and asked a question because it's really important for us to hear from you. And there were some good questions that made me think. And so I'm going to do some research, for example, on the Air Force planes flying over the Aldo Leopold Wilderness. I mean, these are things that get me thinking, so I really appreciate it. So there is so much at stake in this election. We can't continue down our current path of stagnating wages and rising costs, of anger and divisiveness, of pollution and climate change. We can't afford to cut taxes for billionaires while healthcare and education go underfunded. We need to change course. And I want to be part of that change, but I can't do it alone. So that's why I'm asking you tonight to join me in fighting for a better future for New Mexico. Because I believe we can get our state and our country back on track, but only if we come together. If we come together to fight for a future in which every American, no matter his or her background, has the opportunity to succeed. If we come together to celebrate our differences, even as we strengthen the ties that bind us together as Americans. If we come together to shun hatred and division and recommit ourselves to the idea of America as a family, a big, diverse, loving family. Because a united American family can achieve anything it sets out to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Mad Hildebrandt.
Thank you, Mr. Martino, and the board and members of the Democratic Party of Sierra County. And I would also like to thank my worthy opponent, David Baake. We do always seem to get along. So we are in troubling times, and it's going to take a strong leader to take this position of congressperson in this district and then to represent our district in Washington, D.C. We can't simply turn the seat blue, but we have to put someone into this seat who can withstand the stresses and demands that they will confront. I have the life experiences that are needed to face down tough opposition. My military experience, my background as military police, my years as a college instructor, and as a parent. These all have prepared me for this job. I grew up on a farm. I broke my horse and I trained her when I was 12 or 13 years old. So I know the needs of our rural communities, which so much of our district is. I am a cowgirl. I am a veteran. I am a New Mexican. I will stand beside the people of southern New Mexico and I will represent them in Congress. I will ask what is needed rather than tell people what is best for them. And I will fight for those things that are important for us, like health care, like sacred lands, and our Native American people have an advocate in me, our unions, so many things I will fight for. In the end, it's up to each of you to decide to choose between me and David. I believe that my life experiences and my education as a doctor of history are valuable assets during the general election, the coming general election, and in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, Mad. Thank you, David. It was an honor to be with you tonight, and it was great to meet both of you. I'm glad I got a chance to do that before you come to KRWG next month for our next forum. You're all invited to that, to be in the audience, and you're also invited to provide questions for that event. You can email those to feedback@nmsu.edu. And I really mean that, by the way. We're not just telling you to send questions. I had a great joy to tell David and Mad that when we did our forums for the Las Cruces municipal election recently, we had several of them, we promoted that, and I was pleased that all of the questions that we asked came from email submissions. So made my job easy, and it also encourages me, just like tonight encourages me so much, to have people come up and ask such important questions. It's very refreshing too, right? I mean, it's better than listening to the latest tweet. We get real questions about public policy and the future of our country, and great responses about what we can do about the future of our country. That's why it's an honor for me to be able to do these events. Someone asked about the question again, about the email address. It's feedback@nmsu.edu. And in addition to sending me questions at that address, I encourage you to continue the dialogue and send me submissions for our website. One of the biggest battles I've had as director of content at KRWG is I have made it clear that we must give voice to the people. And part of that is that we publish every day local viewpoint columns on our website. And we're getting more and more and more every month. I also encourage many of you, if you'd like to be on the radio, after you send me that comment for our website, that column for our website. If you want to do that, if you want to record your columns for the radio station, let me know that. We only have a handful of people who are willing to do that. We need more. Because, as was indicated by many of you through your questions tonight, we are in unique times. And the answer is everyone in this room coming together and to have your voice be heard and encourage others to have their voice heard and vote and register to vote and encourage others to register to vote. It's been an honor being with you tonight, and I thank you so much for supporting public media and for supporting civil dialogue. It's really, I leave here very happy, and I have to drive to Albuquerque tonight. I've got a 2-hour drive, so I leave happy in the car. And Sid, I know you had some final words too.
I'd just like to say that I think all of us probably, this was one of the best conversations, political conversations I've seen. The only thing that I wasn't helped with was who to pick and who to vote for, because I would be completely happy with either one winning, and also if with the moderator too.
Yeah, you should jump in.
I wish I could run for office now, right? No.
And I think all the questions were wonderful, and the answers were just as wonderful. And I think that, and it's, I had forgotten about the cap on Social Security earnings, and I think all three of you were wonderful with that too. And I think that it was just great, and I think that everybody feels the same way. And I'd just like to say thank you to all who contributed to the liveliness of the discussion. I would again like to express my gratitude to all of those who made this event possible. If you, like me, are reluctant to see the evening come to an end, I invite you to stay on and introduce yourself to Madeline, David, and Fred, who have agreed to delay their trips home to be present for a brief meet and greet, and the doors will close in 15 minutes. And thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. That was wonderful.